Let me very quickly summarize about this project. It is called Leci Combinati, right?
Yes,
So this means healing facility, I understand.
yes,
And
yes.
this complex now is under construction. It's going to be finished probably
Next year,
next
next
year.
year. Yes, it's
But
nearing completion.
okay. So, but it's well into construction, and this complex now, um, so it sits in the center of the city in a public park, and it is made up of several components. It is a hospital with an underground parking, and it's a museum with an underground gallery, right?
Hmm. Yes, actually, the park was created for this project. It was initially a site of a former healing facility, as you said. It was called like that. It was a very popular hospital. It had a hectare and a half territory in the center of Tbilisi. You can imagine that it sits neighbors the historic university building. From another side of the land plot, there is a zoo, which is now taken into the outskirts of the city, but it's the very central place, and the avenue along which it sits is a central axis driveway through the city. So it's the most central part and most premium land plot in the city, but the owner was generous to develop it not into a commercial use, but to grant the city with a 2/3 of the territory was transformed into a public park, and a middle-sized medical facility was put there, and also there was a significant amount of square footage granted for the cultural facility, which there never existed.
The original hospital was housed in the 1930s building. It was, I understand, it was run by the government. What was the reason that it, ended its existence? It kind of dilapidated over time. What happened?
Basically, a political transformation and economic transformation where the government medical facilities were privatized, and so this was the part of that process.
And what kind of brief did the client give you? And did you try to turn it around and turn it into your own brief?
Basically, that is what happened, because at first there was a uh, plan to build a much bigger hospital than it is now, and basically all the land plot was used by this single medical use and medical program, and it was a vast flat surface with all the ambulatory facilities and the towering volume, which included the stationary beds and so on. But this building was going to be built there, and very interesting and maybe unique thing is that happened that just at the eve of the construction start, when we visited with the client, when we visited the land plot, we discovered, non-verbally of course, but we discovered some sadness in our clients' eyes that it was not the project they were desperately wanting to build. And that's when we stepped in and told maybe we can change it into something other. And our guess was that at that moment, client found that the city needed more recreational area, more parks, more social gathering, more public space, much than the hospital itself. So the historic aura of the medical facility stayed there, but it rather stepped back and made its way to develop the other public programs.
Maybe you can talk, both of you can talk a little bit about some of your favorite parts and moments in this complex.
We kept this part of the building, which we saw as the most iconic, let's say, of that building.
And this part is the closest to the Central Avenue, right?
Yes, Central Avenue, and this is the most remembering part of the building because it was the main entrance and it was done in the natural stone, and it was different by its volume, it was different by its material, and it was the only part basically which was visible from the street because other parts were hidden behind the very rich vegetation in front of the building. So when you saw the building, you saw just that part. So we kept that part, not only the outer walls of the building, but also the inner staircase and the foyer, part of the foyer. And we turned it into for the museum because we wrapped it into a spiral ramp, which is kind of a different ramp than trivial spiral, which walks around the building. It's just backward winding spiral, and just one circle goes around the building for 360 degrees. And this ramp is accessible from the street, and you don't have to enter any of the institutions to get on that ramp. And you go by this ramp, go to the upper level, which is the added public terrace on the roof of that remaining building. And so this rectangular building was turned into a circular one. And because you obviously can circumambulate that building already visually and physically as well, and you go ahead winding around it and wandering this building and observing this building, observing the role of the old wrapped into a new one, and observing the city from the very free terrace above it, and basically this is the concept of the building when you have an old but not marked as an old, just welded into a new one without a strict and a clear mark of where the old and new begins, and it is somehow made a kind of symbiosis of two different, very different stylistic and formal materials which are welded together, as I said. And this is maybe the most, answering your question, maybe this is the favorite part.
And I understand that this building that you're talking about, the older building, so this is just a fragment of the existing.
Yes.
So when you walk around it, you see not only the facade parts, but you also see a kind of sectional view,
yes,
right? Which is,
yes,
I guess, sealed by new facades, right? So it's a very hybrid experience going into what used to be interior, but now it's exterior. And you can't
absolutely
get around the surface, and also, older surfaces, new surfaces, right?
I think that the word hybrid is the best word describing this solution, because we think that the hybridization, pardon me for this, in inventing this word, but is very important topic, not only visually but socially as well, because we observe and we suffer this polarization of society, and this is the main issue now, and not only locally here, but I think around the world, this problem is on the agenda. This is one of the main problems of polarization and putting the message of an example of coming together and meeting together different forms and different functions, and is very important message. And we think that this bet was done intentionally to we think that this is the most important thing we can communicate with the society, with public, the example of hybrid and symbiosis and coming together.
And Irakli, what is your favorite part of the project?
I think the second part, which is very important, is the part of this second ramp, which is going from the yard into the pool. It's pool, we call it lake, but it's initially pool, which is going downside to the second part of this
Underground gallery.
Underground building, which is the galleries, two big, large halls of exhibition galleries. And it's very interesting ramp because it's has a sphere holes on the floor, and it makes some kind of transparent shape of this ramp, which is going down. It's very interesting part of this movie.
So yeah, I find it quite fascinating and ironic that both of your favorite parts are not related to the original program of the building, right?
Yes, no. That is what I lacked in my answer, that we somehow neglected the hospital part. But this is absolutely another chapter, and very favorite in a kind for us. And this is our favorite toy. But let's say that is the most adorable part for us. But there we know where we act as architects and what is the architectural input in that part, in part of the hospital. And the first part is more important because it's public. It's public in a way that it is attached to the street and avenue, and this is the central part of the building, and it has the pressure of history and pressure of public critique, and it has this not formal but more conceptual aspect, which is, yes, let's say we were enjoying architecture there, and there we were completely serious, and we don't know which way of thinking is doing is more correct and important.
And could you talk a little bit about the skin of the new building, which I understand is entirely custom made, and you have a long relationship with the fabricator who produced those fiber cement panels. If you could talk about that.
The skin is fiber concrete. We have this relationship with this factory which is making this concrete plate, but for the first time when we had a relationship, they are doing some small objects, some benches or some fences or something like this. We asked them to make for us a skin of one of our building. It was a little bit risky to give them this amount of work, but I think they make it very well. Then we did that with a little bit bigger building. It was a hotel, and now they are doing absolutely fantastic job, because every panel there is custom made. It's it's worth a sculpture and it's made like sculpture. And this building is needed to have this skin because it's made like an apparatus, like a gadget, and so it needed to have this single molded skin, like the home appliances which are done in the factory. So this is a big luck that we could approach that company.
Yeah, I want you to continue speaking about this idea of gadgets, appliances, devices, and gizmos that you mentioned before. Where did this idea come from? Why do you get so fascinated with this idea and turning buildings into kind of devices?
We were initially fascinated with the gadgets, and we discovered that our fascination of the gadgets and maybe the Braun, this company produces the players and speakers and shaving machines and especially Bang & Olufsen and companies like that, which are famous for their design. They were a kind of inspiration for us, and we tracked this lab back to from where it originated. And we discovered that this was not because we were fond of the gadgets, but the gadgets were fond of architecture. And we even made a text about it as a kind of essay where we describe that the gadgets were borrowing the forms of architecture and borrowing the aesthetics of architecture. And some of the gadgets have this quality of and the ability to be not only home appliances, but have some symbolic or maybe some formal, bigger meaning than their function per se. So we just noticed this ability of the gadgets to be so beautiful and so architectural that we took it back to architecture. So they borrowed from architecture and we took it back to architecture. But when we have this ability and we have the possibility to incorporate the building into a single apparatus form, and some architecture is capable of doing that by its tectonical characteristics, then we are eager to address these fascinating forms of single volume and this elaborated volume and this sculptural volume and the quality which has the gadgets.
Very interesting. When you talk about your work, in addition to just mentioned gadgets, appliances, devices, gizmos, you use such words and phrases as laboratory synthesis, tension, spontaneity, ambiguity, colliding, mutating, and the title from our previous interview a few years ago was We Want to Build Our Own Utopia. So how else would you describe your work, and what kind of architecture do you try to achieve?
It was the end of 20th century, famous 90s, which was the most prosperous time for the West and most dark and the most dark and horrible thing for us, because we were literally in the dark without the electricity and without the tap water. And so this move towards the better surroundings and better environment, better buildings and better infrastructure was all we had in mind. And each building and each building site we were trying to turn into that. We were picking some land plot and turning it into a better example of Western kind. And this was our utopia. You know, there was one composer who said that I'm writing the music I want to hear myself. That maybe that's the, in a nutshell, that's what we are doing.
I will read a passage from our previous interview where I think you summarize pretty well what are you trying to do, what kind of architecture you want to do, and how you want to experiment. So you said to us, architecture is all about synthesis. What we enjoy most is bringing many different ideas and things together. We deal with opposites, whether in terms of material qualities or forms that strangely fit and yet attract. It is that resistance, the spark, so to speak, that bonds and fuses things almost in a welding-like process. It is that kind of tension that we are after. We use contrasts and counterforces to achieve something spontaneous and radical.
Yes, luckily we were not disappointed in that ideals which we had that time, and now as well we are doing the same. We think that in these times, that when the agenda is formed not by the stylistic or epochal tendencies, but by personal expressions and personal experience, the thing you believe is the most precious and cherished asset you have to work with. Different things can live with each other, and every new idea will be included into the further works and the works that are coming ahead. Of course, crystallized, of course, maybe refined, but everything can be included into a building and into an architecture, and not to be very broad and very philosophical about it. An example of wife and a husband arguing in our office about how many rooms and what kind of rooms they want, we always say that you just express your different wishes and ideas, and we will weld it into a single project, and you will be content with it. You don't have to choose. We can make everything together.